The gleaming space station Concordia rotated slowly against the backdrop of stars, its massive ring structure housing representatives from over 50 alien species. It stood as the galaxy's neutral ground for diplomatic relations and interstellar justice. In the main judicial chamber, the cool blue light reflected off the polished surfaces, creating an atmosphere of detached authority. Magistrate June sat tall behind his elevated bench. His pale skin, characteristic of his Albidian species, seemed to glow under the chamber lights. The Albidians had administered galactic law for millennia, their white complexion and stoic demeanor becoming synonymous with justice itself across inhabited space. The court announcer's voice echoed through the chamber. The court calls Commander Dury of Earth Fleet to stand before Magistrate Jun on charges of protocol violation. The doors slid open, and Commander Dury entered with confident strides. Her dark skin contrasted with the crisp lines of her blue Earth Fleet uniform. She carried herself with military precision, her expression revealing nothing as she approached the defendant's position. The gallery stirred with whispers. Humans were relatively new to the galactic community, just 2 centuries since they'd developed faster-than-light travel. Many older species still viewed them with suspicion or curiosity. Commander Dury, Magistrate Jun began, his voice calm and measured. You stand accused of accessing restricted diplomatic channels during the arrival of the Centauri delegation yesterday. Station logs show your personal code was used to breach secure communications during a Category 1 diplomatic event. How do you respond to these charges? Dury stood at perfect attention. Not guilty, Magistrate. I was responding to an emergency signal from within the diplomatic section. Jun's pale fingers tapped the control panel before him, bringing up holographic displays visible only to him. Station security recorded no emergency signals during that time frame. The signal was transmitted on an encrypted Earth Fleet frequency. Magistrate, Dury explained. It wouldn't appear on standard station monitoring systems. Jun's expression hardened slightly. Convenient that this alleged emergency used communications that cannot be verified by this court. I can provide the decryption codes to security if required, Dury offered. After the fact, that would hardly constitute evidence. Jun shook his head. What was the nature of this supposed emergency? I'm not at liberty to disclose that information without proper clearance, Magistrate. It involves matters of Earth security protocols. The whispers in the gallery grew louder. An older Albidian observer muttered about typical human excuses, loud enough for those nearby to hear. Jun raised his hand for silence. Commander Dury, this station operates under galactic common law. Your Earth protocols do not supersede the authority of this court. I ask again, what was the nature of the emergency? Dury paused before answering. I can only say that I received information suggesting a possible threat to the safety of multiple delegations. And did you report this threat through proper station? Security channels? There wasn't time, Magistrate. The situation required immediate action. Jun's expression remained unchanged, but his voice took on a colder tone. So you took it upon yourself to bypass station security protocols, access restricted diplomatic channels during a sensitive exchange, potentially compromising relations with the Centauri, all based on an emergency only you can verify? The commander stood her ground. I acted according to my training and the information available to me at the time. Jun studied her for a long moment. The chamber had fallen completely, silent now. Spectators from dozens of species watching the exchange with interest. Humans were known for their unpredictability, which made them both valuable allies and concerning neighbors in galactic politics. This court cannot accept unverifiable claims as defense against documented violations, Jun finally stated. The evidence clearly shows you accessed restricted systems without authorization. Section 17 of the Concordia Protocols leaves no room for interpretation in such matters. Dury's expression remained neutral, though her posture seemed to stiffen slightly. Given your military rank and the sensitive nature of interspecies diplomacy, Jun continued, I am imposing a fine of 50,000 credits, to be paid before your departure from this station. Consider yourself fortunate that diplomatic incidents require discretion, or the penalty might involve detention. The spectators murmured their approval. The Albidian justice system was known for its rigid application of law, a stability many species found comforting in the chaos of interstellar relations. Does the defendant wish to make a statement before judgment is final? June asked, a procedural courtesy. Dury looked directly at him, her dark eyes meeting his pale ones without flinching. The fine will be paid, Magistrate. June nodded, ready to dismiss the case when Dury continued speaking. However, I would respectfully suggest that the Magistrate review Interstellar Code 459B when time permits. It may prove relevant to our interaction today. June frowned slightly. He had memorized all 3,428 interstellar laws currently recognized by the Galactic Council, and he couldn't recall anything significant about 459B. The reference bothered him. It felt like the human was implying he had missed something important. This court is adjourned, June declared, tapping his bench formally. The fine is due within 48 standard hours. Commander Dury bowed slightly, a human gesture of respect, before turning to leave the chamber. June couldn't help but notice she didn't seem concerned about the substantial fine. Something about her demeanor suggested she had expected this outcome. After the chamber cleared, June remained at his bench, quickly accessing the legal database through his neural interface. He searched for code 459B but found nothing of significance, just a minor regulation about diplomatic communication protocols in emergencies. Later that evening, June walked along the curved observation deck of the station, watching the stars through the massive viewports. The case continued to nag at him. Humans were new to space, yes, but they had gained influence rapidly. Their adaptability made them valuable members of the galactic community, if sometimes frustrating to deal with. Troubled by today's case, Magistrate? A voice asked. June turned to find his colleague, Magistrate Han, approaching. Her white Albidian features were set in a friendly expression. The human commander, June admitted. Something feels unresolved. Humans often have that effect, Han said with a slight smile. They operate on intuition as much as logic. It makes them unpredictable. She referenced a code that doesn't seem relevant to her case. Why would she do that? Han shrugged. Perhaps to appear knowledgeable? Humans are still establishing their place in galactic society. They often try to demonstrate competence beyond their years. June nodded, but remained unconvinced. Commander, Dury hadn't seemed like someone grasping for status. She had carried herself with the confidence of someone who knew exactly what she was doing. Perhaps I should look into her background, June said quietly. Don't let one human occupy too much of your thoughts, Han advised. We have the Galactic Summit beginning tomorrow. 53 species representatives will be arriving, and the judicial team needs to be prepared for any disputes. June nodded, but as Han walked away, he found himself accessing the station's personnel database, searching for more information on Commander Dury of Earth Fleet. The limited public record showed her as a mid-level officer with security clearance, nothing unusual. Yet the way she had mentioned code 459B felt deliberate, like a message he was meant to understand. As the stars continued their slow parade past the viewport, June couldn't shake the feeling that there was much more to Commander Dury than his court had seen today. The artificial dawn cycle began on Concordia Station, illuminating its curved corridors with soft golden light. In the exclusive dining hall reserved for judicial officials, Magistrate June sat across from his longtime colleague, Magistrate Tay. Both Albidians enjoyed their traditional morning meal of nutrient crystals dissolved in warm water, a practice their species had maintained for thousands of years. The human paid her fine promptly, June remarked, checking the notification on his tablet. 50,000 credits, transferred without complaint. Tay nodded approvingly, his white fingers tapping lightly against the table's polished surface. As expected, humans understand power structures if nothing else. Something still bothers me about the case, June admitted. Her mention of code 459B seems deliberate, yet I can find no significant regulation under that designation. Humans often bluff, Tay said dismissively. 2 centuries in space has given them confidence beyond their experience. They reference codes and precedents hoping we won't check their accuracy. Perhaps, Jun conceded, though doubt lingered in his mind. Still, Commander Dury didn't strike me as someone who would bluff pointlessly. All humans appear confident to our eyes, Tay replied with a small gesture that indicated mild amusement. It's their nature. Loud, expressive, always in motion. Their species barely unified their home planet before launching into space. Compare that to our 5 millennia of calculated galactic diplomacy. Jun nodded absently, scrolling through his tablet. I've requested access to her complete service record. Tay paused, setting down his drinking vessel. That seems excessive for a routine protocol violation. I cannot explain why, but this case feels important, Jun said. The timing, with the summit beginning today. You're overthinking this, Tay interrupted gently. One human officer broke protocol and received standard punishment. The system worked as designed. Their conversation was interrupted by a notification chime. Jun checked his tablet and frowned. Request denied. Commander Dury's complete record. Requires alpha-level security clearance. Alpha level? Tay leaned forward with sudden interest. That's unusually high for a mid-rank officer. Indeed, Jun agreed. Most fleet commanders have gamma clearance at most. Perhaps she works in intelligence, Tay suggested. Earth has been aggressive about establishing their information networks. Jun closed his tablet with a decisive motion. I believe I'll attend the summit opening ceremony today. Perhaps observing the Earth delegation might provide some context. Just be careful, Tay warned. The Council doesn't appreciate judicial officials becoming too involved in diplomatic matters. Our role is to interpret law, not create it. Of course, Jun assured him. Merely professional curiosity. 16 levels below, in the secure quarters assigned to Earth's delegation, Commander Dury sat before a communication terminal. The screen glowed with the Earth fleet insignia as she waited for her encrypted connection to establish. The screen flickered, revealing Admiral Min's weathered face. His eyes looked tired, the result of managing Earth's complex position in galactic politics. Commander, report, he ordered without preamble. The fine has been paid, Admiral, Dury said, and the reference to 459B was placed directly with Magistrate Jun, as instructed. Any immediate reaction? Hard to tell with Albidians, sir. They maintain rigid control over their expressions. But he seemed puzzled. The Admiral nodded slowly. Good. Curiosity is what we need right now. The Albidians pride themselves on legal expertise. He won't rest until he understands the reference. May I ask a question, sir? Dury ventured. Proceed. Why not simply approach the Albidian delegation directly about the Harmonic Accord? Why this indirect method? Admiral Min sighed. Politics, Commander. The Albidian leadership has publicly dismissed the accord as premature human overreach. But individual Albidians, especially those who work closely with multiple species, might be more receptive. Magistrate Jun has a reputation for fairness, despite his traditional background. Dury nodded. And my security clearance, he's already attempted to access my full record. As expected, Min said with a hint of satisfaction. The alpha clearance will only intrigue him further. Sometimes the best way past rigid thinking is to present a puzzle. The summit security measures are in place? Dury asked, changing topics. Yes, though I'm concerned about the Rigelian sector. Their delegates arrived with twice the usual security detail. I'll monitor the situation, Dury promised. As the communication ended, Dury moved to her personal storage unit and retrieved a small case. Inside rested a formal diplomatic uniform rather than her military attire. She changed quickly, the deep blue fabric decorated with subtle Earth insignia marking her as part of the official delegation rather than simple security personnel. In another part of the station, Magistrate Jun passed through multiple security checkpoints to reach the grand concourse where the summit would begin. The massive circular chamber had been transformed for the occasion, with designated areas for each participating species and a central platform for speakers. June noticed the Earth delegation immediately. Unlike many species who clustered together, the humans spread throughout the room, engaging with various representatives. Their natural sociability, sometimes dismissed as shallow by older species, served them well in diplomatic settings. Spotted Commander Dury among them, now dressed in formal diplomatic attire. She moved with purpose, speaking briefly with representatives from several systems before joining a serious conversation with the Proxima delegates. Jun watched with growing curiosity. Her role seemed far more significant than her military rank had suggested. Interesting choice of observation, a voice commented beside him. Jun turned to find Elder Representative Suk of the Galactic Council standing nearby. The senior Albidian diplomat observed the crowd with practiced ease. Elder Suk, Jun greeted her with appropriate deference. I'm merely observing the interactions before the summit begins. Yet your gaze returns repeatedly to the Earth delegation, she noted, particularly to Commander Dury, whom I believe appeared in your court yesterday. Jun maintained his composure, though he was surprised by her knowledge of the case. You're well informed about routine protocol violations. When they involve key diplomatic personnel before a major summit, yes, Suk replied. Her tone remained pleasant, but Jun sensed disapproval beneath her words. Key personnel? Jun questioned. Commander Dury's record indicates a mid-level security position. Suk gave him a measured look. Not all records tell complete stories, Magistrate, especially when it comes to humans. She paused. The Albidian diplomatic position regarding Earth's recent initiatives remains clear. I trust the judiciary maintains appropriate neutrality. The law is applied equally to all species, Jun assured her with formal correctness. See that? It remains so, Suk said before moving away to greet arriving dignitaries. Jun watched her go, his confusion deepening. The interaction suggested Commander Dury held significance beyond her apparent role, and that the Albidian diplomatic corps was concerned about her activities. His attention was drawn to a commotion near the Rigelian delegation. Security personnel were arguing with summit staff about weapons protocols. Jun noticed Commander Dury observing the situation carefully, her hand subtly touching her communication device. As Jun watched, he saw something that struck him as odd. A brief hand signal, exchanged between Dury and a Centauri representative across the room. The Centauri immediately moved toward the Earth delegation leader, whispering something urgent. The pieces refused to form a coherent picture. A military officer with diplomatic status and alpha-level clearance. Coded communications with multiple species. Reference to an obscure regulation that seemed to exist nowhere in the official records. Jun made a decision. He would need to speak with Commander Dury directly, away from the formal constraints of the courtroom. Something significant was developing, and he increasingly suspected that the protocol violation had been merely the surface of a much deeper matter. As delegates took their places for the opening ceremony, Jun slipped away from the judicial observation area. The summit would last for 3 days. He had time to solve the puzzle that Commander Dury represented, and why his own diplomatic leadership seemed concerned about her influence. The grand concourse of Concordia Station buzzed with activity as the first day of the summit progressed. Delegates from 37 species moved through the space, forming temporary alliances and discussing trade agreements. Floating translation devices hovered near groups of different species, converting the various languages, clicks, and telepathic impressions into understandable communication. Magistrate Jun observed from the judicial balcony, his eyes repeatedly finding Commander Dury among the crowd. She moved with purpose, now clearly functioning as more than simple security personnel. Jun noticed how representatives from younger spacefaring nations sought her out, engaging in brief but intense conversations. Magistrate Jun, a voice called from behind. This is an unexpected pleasure. Jun turned to find Taro, the head of station security, approaching. The human officer extended his hand in the traditional Earth greeting. Officer Taro, Jun replied, accepting the handshake after a moment's hesitation. I'm observing the summit proceedings with interest. Of course, Taro said with a smile. Though I notice your observation seems focused on specific participants. Jun didn't deny it. Commander Duri's case yesterday raised questions. Her diplomatic access seems extensive for someone who described herself as military personnel in I court. Taro's expression remained neutral. Commander Duri's responsibilities are multifaceted. So I'm beginning to understand, Jun replied. Perhaps you could clarify. The conversation was interrupted by a soft chime from Taro's communication device. He checked it quickly, his expression changing to concern. If you'll excuse me, Magistrate, security matter. Jun nodded and watched Taro move swiftly toward a service exit. Something was happening behind the scenes of this summit, something beyond the usual diplomatic maneuvering. The main lighting in the concourse dimmed slightly, indicating the start of the afternoon session. Jun took his assigned seat in the judicial observation section as delegates moved toward the central speaking area. The Earth delegation settled into their position directly across from the Albidian representatives, a placement that felt deliberate rather than coincidental. The Yak, chief moderator, a respected Proxima diplomat, approached the central podium. Distinguished delegates, we reconvene to discuss the proposed amendments to the Galactic Trade Accords. The floor recognizes Elder Representative Suk of the Albidian Federation. Suk rose gracefully, her white features composed as she approached the podium. Honored representatives, the Albidian Federation has maintained the legal framework of galactic commerce for 3 millennia. The proposed amendments from Earth represent an unnecessary disruption to a functioning system. Jun noticed Commander Duri leaning forward slightly, watching Suk with intense focus. While we welcome Earth's growing participation in galactic affairs, Suk continued, their limited experience makes their proposed harmonic trade protocols premature at best, dangerous at worst. Jun straightened in his seat. The harmonic protocols. Could this be connected to the mysterious 459B Duri had mentioned? Before Suk could continue, the emergency alert system activated with a piercing tone. Red lights flashed throughout the concourse as the station's AI voice announced, Warning, environmental systems compromised in sections 12 through 17. Potential atmospheric contamination detected. Please remain calm, and the message cut off abruptly as the main lights failed. The concourse plunged into darkness, except for the flashing red emergency lights. Shouts of alarm rose from various delegations as backup systems struggled to activate. Jun rose from his seat, trying to assess the situation through the confusion. The emergency lighting cast strange shadows across the concourse, making it difficult to distinguish shapes. Delegates crowded toward exits while security personnel shouted instructions that were lost in the chaos. Something slammed into Jun from behind, sending him sprawling forward. He fell hard against the floor, pain radiating through his shoulder. As he tried to rise, the panicked crowd surged around him, threatening to trample anyone who had fallen. A strong hand gripped his arm, pulling him upright. Stay close to me, Magistrate. Jun found Commander Duri beside him, her expression focused and alert. She had drawn a small weapon that Jun recognized as an Earth Fleet stunner. What's happening? Jun demanded. Someone's trying to breach the environmental controls, Duri replied tersely, guiding him toward a service corridor away from the main crowd. The power failure isn't accidental. How do you know this? Before she could answer, the door ahead burst open. 3 figures in environmental suits rushed through, their faces obscured by reflective masks. They carried cylindrical devices that Jun didn't recognize. Down! Duri shouted, pushing Jun against the wall while raising her weapon. The stunner discharged with a sharp buzz. One of the suited figures crumpled to the floor. The others turned toward Duri and Jun, raising their cylinders threateningly. Emergency protocol, Sierra, Duri called out clearly. Suddenly, the corridor filled with Earth security personnel who seemed to materialize from hidden positions. The remaining intruders were quickly overwhelmed and restrained. Take them to secure, holding, Duri ordered, and get those devices to containment level 9 protocols. Jun watched in astonishment as the Earth security team operated with practiced efficiency, securing the area and removing both the unconscious attackers and their mysterious devices. You were prepared for this, June said, realization dawning. This is why you accessed the restricted channels yesterday. Dury nodded, holstering her weapon. We received intelligence about a possible attack during the summit. I was verifying the security breach points when your station security flagged my access. Before John could respond, his communication device signaled an urgent message. It was a station-wide alert for judicial officers to report to Emergency Briefing Room 1 immediately. You should go, Dury said. The council will need judicial representation during the crisis response. And you? June asked. I have other responsibilities, she replied, already moving down the corridor in the opposite direction. 2 hours later, June sat in stunned silence as the emergency briefing concluded. The station's chief of security had just confirmed that someone had attempted to release a highly sophisticated neurotoxin into the ventilation system, serving the delegates' quarters. If successful, the attack would have killed representatives from at least 20 species while they slept. The quick action of Earth's security team prevented catastrophe, the security chief explained, particularly Commander Dury's prepositioning of personnel based on intelligence they had gathered. The door to the briefing room slid open, and Elder Representative Sook entered, accompanied by the highest-ranking members of the Galactic Council. The assembled officers and officials rose respectfully. This emergency session of the Combined Judicial and Security Council will now begin, announced the council secretary. Please be seated. June took his place at the judicial representatives' table, noticing with surprise that Commander Dury was being escorted into the room. Rather than joining the security personnel, she was directed to the main table alongside the senior council members. Elder Sook's expression remained carefully neutral, though June detected tension in her posture. In light of today's events, the council has determined that a full briefing on the harmonic accord is necessary. June glanced around the room, seeing confusion on many faces that matched his own. The harmonic accord? The term had been mentioned, only in passing during trade discussions. For those unfamiliar, Sook continued, the harmonic accord represents a proposed restructuring of galactic legal and security frameworks. While the Albidian Federation has expressed reservations about its implementation timeline, today's events suggest we must consider its security provisions with greater urgency. She gestured toward Commander Dury. The Council recognizes Dr. Nara Dury, Principal Architect of the Harmonic Accord. Jun nearly forgot his Albidian composure. Doctor? Principal Architect? He watched as Dury rose and approached the central position. Thank you, Elder Representative, she said calmly. As today's events demonstrate, our current security protocols contain significant vulnerabilities. The Harmonic Accord addresses these through integrated multi-species approaches rather than the siloed systems currently in place. As Dury continued, her presentation, displaying complex security and legal frameworks on the room's holographic projectors, Jun finally understood. The commander he had fined for a protocol violation was actually one of Earth's leading legal architects, working to reshape the very foundations of galactic governance. The mysterious code 459B suddenly made sense. It wasn't a legal code at all, but likely a reference to her work that she had wanted him to discover, and he had dismissed her as a simple rule breaker. The emergency session stretched late into the station's night cycle. Magistrate June sat silently as Dr. Dury concluded her presentation on the Harmonic Accord. The holographic displays showed complex diagrams of interconnected legal and security systems, a complete reimagining of how galactic governance might function. The current system was designed 5 millennia ago, Dr. Dury explained. It served well when interstellar travel was limited to a handful of species. But with 37 spacefaring civilizations now regularly interacting, its weaknesses have become critical. Elder Sook leaned forward. The Albidian Federation has maintained galactic peace through consistent application of established law. Your accord would disrupt centuries of stability. With respect, Elder, Dury replied calmly. Today's attack demonstrates that our definition of stability may be outdated. The attackers used knowledge of our separate security systems to exploit gaps between them. June studied the faces around the room. The younger species representatives nodded in agreement with Dury, while the established powers, particularly the Albidians and Centauri, maintained skeptical expressions. When the session finally adjourned, Jun found himself walking the quiet corridors of the diplomatic level. Sleep seemed impossible with his mind racing through the implications of what he'd learned. The harmonic accord represented a fundamental shift in how species would interact, reducing the traditional Albidian role as primary arbiters of galactic law. Magistrate Jun, a voice called softly. Jun turned to find Dr. Dury approaching along the curved corridor. She had changed from her formal attire into simpler clothing, though she still carried herself with the same confident posture. Dr. Dury, Jun acknowledged, I believe I owe you an apology. Had I known your position, you would have applied the law differently? She interrupted. That's precisely the problem the Accord addresses. Justice shouldn't depend on rank or position. Jun considered this. Perhaps not. But context matters in legal decisions. Your actions were protecting the station, information I didn't have when rendering judgment. Walk with me? Dury suggested, gesturing toward the observation deck. They walked in silence until reaching the vast transparent wall that offered a view of the surrounding stars. The station's rotation created a slow parade of constellations across the viewport. Code 459B, Jun said finally. It's not a legal statute at all, is it? Dury smiled slightly. It's the classification number of my doctoral dissertation, Harmonic, Legal Theory and Multi-Species Governance. The foundation for what became the Accord. You wanted me to investigate you, Jun realized. We needed to open dialogue with influential Albidian judicial officers, Dury admitted. Your species' leadership has blocked formal discussion of the Accord for 3 years, but individual Albidians, especially those who work directly with multiple species, might be more receptive, Jun finished. So the protocol violation was deliberate? The emergency was real, Dury corrected, but I could have used official channels. I chose a method I knew would bring me before an Albidian magistrate. Jun felt a mixture of irritation and reluctant admiration. An elaborate way to start a conversation. Sometimes the hardest part of change is beginning the dialogue, Dury said, gazing out at the stars. Especially with species who pride themselves on tradition. Before Jun could respond, his communication device signaled an incoming message. He checked it and felt a chill run through him. What is it? Dury asked, noticing his reaction. A directive from the Albidian High Command, Jun said, his voice tight. All judicial officers are ordered to formally oppose the Harmonic Accord and uphold traditional legal structures. Not unexpected, Dury sighed. Your leadership fears loss of influence. It's more than that, Jun said slowly. The directive claims the Accord would undermine the very foundation of galactic stability. And what do you think, Magistrate? Dury asked quietly, not as an Albidian judicial officer but as someone who has spent a career seeking justice. Jun stared out at the stars, considering the question carefully. His entire professional life had been built around the Albidian legal tradition, its precision, its consistency, its ancient wisdom. The Harmonic Accord proposed something fundamentally different, a flexible system that incorporated multiple legal philosophies rather than imposing a single standard. I think, he said finally, that I need to study the complete text of the Accord before forming an opinion. Dury smiled. I can arrange that. Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent announcement over the station's communication system. All delegates and judicial representatives report to main concourse for emergency session at 0800 hours. Attendance mandatory. It seems your leadership is moving quickly, Dury observed. As is yours, I suspect, Jun replied. This confrontation has been building for years. When they parted ways, Jun returned to his quarters and found the complete text of the Harmonic Accord waiting in his secure message system. He spent the remaining hours of the night cycle reading intently, his understanding of galactic law both challenged and expanded with each section. The emergency session the next. Morning brought together all summit participants. The grand concourse had been reconfigured after the attack, with enhanced security visible at every entrance. Jun took his place with the judicial delegation, noticing the clear division forming in the room. The established powers, led by the Albidian Federation, sat opposite the coalition of younger spacefaring nations supporting Earth's proposal. Elder Sook took the speaker's position first. Her voice carried throughout the chamber with practiced authority. Honored representatives, yesterday's unfortunate incident should not rush us into hasty decisions. The Albidian Federation has maintained galactic peace for 5,000 years, through consistent application of established legal principles. This proposed harmonic accord would destabilize those foundations for unproven theories. Murmurs spread through the assembly as representatives from various species exchanged glances. June noticed Dr. Dury sitting calmly among the Earth delegation, her expression revealing nothing. Moreover, Sook continued, we have evidence suggesting the security threat may have been exaggerated to create pressure for accepting this radical proposal. The accusation hung in the air, creating immediate tension. The Earth delegation head rose to respond, but before he could speak, Jun found himself standing. The judicial delegation requests speaking rights, he announced formally. Surprise registered on many faces. Albidian judicial officers rarely participated directly in diplomatic proceedings. The chief moderator, looking somewhat flustered, nodded permission. Jun moved to the central speaking position, feeling the weight of every gaze. He saw Elder Sook's sharp look of warning and the hopeful expression on Dr. Dury's face. As judicial representatives, we rarely address political matters, Jun began. Our role is to interpret and apply the law, not to create it. However, when the foundation of law itself is being discussed, perhaps our perspective has value. He paused, gathering his thoughts. The directive from Albidian High Command was clear in its instructions. Oppose the accord at all costs. His career, his standing, his very future within Albidian society hung on his next words. I have spent the night studying the complete text of the Harmonic Accord, June continued. As an Albidian judicial officer with 30 years of experience, I approached it with skepticism. Our legal tradition has indeed served as the backbone of galactic governance for millennia. Elder Sook's expression softened slightly, anticipating June's support. However, June said, I must acknowledge that the accord represents not a rejection of Albidian principles, but their evolution for a more complex galactic community. Its integrated approach to multi-species justice addresses weaknesses that yesterday's attack exposed all too clearly. A murmur spread through the assembly. Jun could see shock on the faces of his fellow Albidians and poorly concealed satisfaction from the Earth delegation. Speaking solely as a judicial officer committed to true justice, Jun concluded, I believe the Harmonic Accord deserves serious consideration by all species, including the Albidian Federation. As Jun returned to his seat, the chamber erupted in discussion. The carefully maintained diplomatic order fractured as representatives began speaking openly across delegation boundaries. Jun felt Elder Sook's cold stare but kept his gaze forward. His communication device immediately lit up with a message from Albidian High Command. Explain your unauthorized statement immediately. Report to Diplomatic Liaison Office upon session conclusion. Jun switched off the device. He had made his choice, knowing the professional consequences. As the debate continued around him, he caught Dr. Dury's eye across the chamber. She nodded once, a simple gesture of respect between legal minds who, despite their different backgrounds, shared a common understanding of what justice could become. The turning point had arrived, not just for Jun's career, but for the future of galactic governance itself. The final day of the summit arrived with an atmosphere of tension throughout Concordia Station. News of Magistrate Jun's unexpected support for the Harmonic Accord had spread quickly, creating ripples through the diplomatic community. The traditional power structures that had governed galactic relations for millennia were being challenged openly for the first time. Jun stood alone at the observation deck, watching distant stars through the massive viewport. His communication device had been silent since he'd ignored the command to report to his superiors. The silence itself was a message. He had crossed a line from which there might be no return. They've removed your access to the Albidian judicial network, a voice said from behind him. Jun turned to find Magistrate Tay approaching, his expression troubled. "I expected as much," June replied calmly. "What were you thinking?" Tay asked, keeping his voice low despite the empty deck. "Contradicting direct orders from high command? Supporting a human initiative against our own delegation's position?" "I was thinking about justice," June said simply. "Not Albidian justice or human. Justice, just justice." Tay shook his head. 5,000 years of legal tradition, and you're willing to set it aside for an untested theory from a species barely out of their planetary system. "Not set aside," June corrected. "Evolve. The Accord preserves the best elements of Albidian legal philosophy while addressing its limitations. The Council is voting on the Accord today," Tay said after a moment. "Elder Sook has called for your judicial credentials to be suspended pending review." June had expected this, but still felt the weight of it settle in his chest. His entire identity had been built around his role as an Albidian judicial officer. "What will you do?" he asked quietly. Tay looked uncomfortable. "I've been assigned to replace you for the final session." He hesitated. "June, I've known you for 30 years. This isn't like you, to risk everything on an idealistic notion." "Perhaps you never truly knew me," June suggested. "Or perhaps I never truly knew myself until forced to examine the foundations of what I believed." A soft tone sounded throughout the station, signaling 30 minutes until the final session would begin. Tay looked at June with genuine regret. "I should go prepare." June nodded. "May justice guide your judgment, old friend." After Tay departed, June remained at the viewport, reconciling himself to the consequences of his choice. His career was likely over, his standing among his own people certainly damaged, yet he felt a strange peace, the clarity that comes from making a difficult decision that aligns with one's deepest values. Magistrate Jun. He turned to find Dr. Dury standing at a respectful distance. She wore formal diplomatic attire, prepared for the final session. "No longer a magistrate, I fear," June replied with a small, resigned gesture. "Your title is less important than your integrity," Dury said. "Your statement yesterday shifted the entire conversation. 3 delegations that were firmly opposed to the Accord have now indicated openness to discussion." "At significant personal cost," June noted without self-pity. Dury approached to stand beside him at the viewport. "May I ask what made you decide to speak?" June considered the question carefully. "Throughout my career, I've prided myself on applying the law equally to all species. Yet when you appeared in my court, I saw only a human officer breaking protocol, not someone working to protect the station. I rendered judgment without full understanding." "That's the nature of our current system," Dury observed. "Separate legal structures that don't share crucial information." "Yes, and then I read the complete text of the Accord." Jun turned to face her directly. The integration of multiple legal philosophies, the flexible framework that adapts to different cultural contexts while maintaining core principles, it's what justice should be. Dury smiled slightly. "That's almost exactly what I wrote in my original dissertation." "Code 459B, Jun said with unexpected humor. A station-wide announcement interrupted their conversation. "All delegates report to Grand Concourse for final session. Voting on proposed accords will commence in 15 minutes. Will you attend?" Dury asked. "I'm no longer officially part of the proceedings," Jun reminded her. "Perhaps not as a judicial representative," she acknowledged. "But the public gallery remains open to all station residents." Jun considered this. To sit in the public gallery, removed from the position of authority he had occupied for decades, would be humbling. Yet he found himself curious about how the vote would unfold, beyond his personal stake in the outcome. "I believe I will," he decided. The Grand Concourse was filled to capacity when June arrived. He found a seat in the upper gallery, far from the judicial section where Magistrate Tai now sat with the other Albidian representatives. From this elevated position, June could observe the entire assembly, the established powers seated on one side, the younger species on the other, and the neutral moderators in between. Elder Sook took the central position, her white features composed. despite the tension evident in the chamber. Distinguished delegates, we come to the pivotal moment of this summit. The proposal before us, the so-called Harmonic Accord, represents a significant departure from established galactic governance. The Albidian Federation believes this change would undermine thousands of years of stable legal practice. She continued outlining objections to the accord, her voice carrying the weight of millennia of tradition. Jun watched the delegates' reactions, noting the clear division between those nodding in agreement and those showing signs of disagreement or skepticism. When Suk finished, Dr. Dury rose to respond. Her voice, though lacking Suk's practiced diplomacy, carried clear conviction. The accord doesn't reject tradition, it builds upon it. It recognizes that with 37 spacefaring species now regularly interacting, a system designed when only 5 species traveled the stars may need adaptation. The debate continued for nearly an hour, representatives from various species adding their perspectives. Jun observed with interest how the discussion evolved, noting that speakers increasingly referenced specific sections of the accord rather than making general claims. His statement yesterday had apparently prompted many to actually read the document, rather than simply following their delegation's position. Finally, the chief moderator called for the vote. Each delegation will now register their position on adopting the framework of the Harmonic Accord as the foundation for future legal development. Jun watched intently as the voting process began. One by one, delegation heads indicated their position. As expected, Earth and its closest allies voted in favor. Several traditionally neutral species followed suit. The established powers, including the Centauri and Rigelians, voted against. All eyes turned to Elder Suk when the Albidian Federation's turn came. She rose slowly, her expression revealing nothing. The Albidian Federation has maintained galactic legal standards for 5 millennia. She began formally. Our commitment to stable governance remains unchanged. Jun prepared himself for the expected rejection. However, Suk continued, surprising many, wisdom requires recognizing when evolution becomes necessary. The Albidian Federation votes to conditionally support the Harmonic Accord framework, with the provision that implementation be gradual and guided by a multi-species council including significant Albidian representation. Murmurs of shock spread through the assembly. Jun could hardly believe what he was hearing. The Albidian Federation, the most traditional power in the galaxy, had found a compromise position. When the final count was announced, the accord had passed with 23 species supporting, 9 opposing, and 5 abstaining. The grand concourse erupted in conversation, as delegates realized they had witnessed a historic shift in galactic governance. As the session concluded, Jun watched Dr. Dury being congratulated by representatives from multiple species. Her years of work had culminated in this moment, the beginning of a new approach to justice across the galaxy. Jun was preparing to leave when a station security officer approached him. Magistrate Jun, your presence is requested in Conference Room 7. Puzzled, Jun followed the officer to a small meeting room near the diplomatic quarters. Inside, he found Elder Suk waiting, alone and composed. Elder, Jun greeted her with appropriate respect despite his uncertain status. Former Magistrate Jun, she replied, emphasizing his changed position. Your actions yesterday created significant difficulties for our delegation. I spoke according to my conscience, Jun said simply. Yes, against direct orders, with significant diplomatic consequences. Suk's expression remained unreadable. And yet, your analysis of the accord proved more thorough than our own diplomatic team's assessment. Jun waited, uncertain where this conversation was leading. The Albidian Federation will need representatives on the Implementation Council who actually understand the accord's principles, Suk continued. Someone who can protect our essential traditions while adapting to new realities. Understanding dawned slowly. You're offering me a position? Not as a judicial officer, Suk clarified. Those credentials remain suspended. But as a special advisor to the Diplomatic Corps, specifically assigned to the Harmonic Accord Implementation Council. Jun studied her carefully. A convenient solution. You maintain the appearance of discipline by not restoring my judicial position while utilizing my knowledge of the accord. Suk allowed herself a small smile. Politics requires finding paths that serve multiple interests simultaneously. She rose to leave. Consider the offer. The council begins work tomorrow. After she departed, Jun returned to the observation deck. The stars seemed unchanged, yet the galaxy they illuminated had shifted fundamentally today. Old powers were adapting, new alliances forming, and the very nature of interspecies justice evolving. I heard about Suk's offer, Dr. Dury said, joining him at the viewport. Will you accept? I believe I will, Jun replied. The Accord needs advocates who understand both traditional and new perspectives. Dury nodded. The Implementation Council needs co-chairs. I've been asked to serve as one. Jun understood the implication. We would be working together. Justice is best served when different perspectives collaborate, she said, extending her hand in the human gesture of agreement. Jun accepted the handshake, recognizing it as more than a simple Earth custom. It was a symbol of the new understanding forming between species that had once seen the galaxy through very different eyes. The end.